What did my wife name our son? My wife Emma gave birth to our first child on a Tuesday morning in March after 14 hours of labor. I was exhausted but overjoyed, holding this perfect little person we'd been waiting 9 months to meet. The nurses were asking for paperwork, and Emma was filling out the birth certificate forms while I focused on our baby. I was so caught up in the moment that I didn't pay attention to what she was writing until she handed the clipboard back to the nurse. I glanced at the form and saw the name she'd chosen, Connor James Walsh. I stared at it for a second, genuinely confused because we'd never discussed that name during the entire pregnancy. We'd spent hours talking about names: Michael, Daniel, Ryan, even Sebastian, but never once had Connor come up in our conversations. When I asked her about it, she just smiled and said she'd always loved that name, that it felt right when she looked at him. I figured pregnancy, brain, and exhaustion were making her forget our previous discussions, so I didn't want to start an argument in the hospital. But over the next few weeks at home, something felt increasingly off about her attachment to that specific name. She'd get this strange, almost distant look on her face whenever she said Connor. Not the happy glow of a new mom saying her baby's name, but something else I couldn't quite identify. When people asked about the name choice, she'd give completely different explanations every time. To my mother, she said it was Irish and meant strong-willed. To her sister, she claimed it reminded her of her grandfather who'd passed away. To our neighbor, she said it was from a beautiful book she'd read during pregnancy. I started paying closer attention to these inconsistencies. Emma would sometimes pause before saying Connor, like she was remembering to use the right name instead of something else. And she'd gotten unusually defensive when my brother suggested we call him Connie as a cute nickname. The really weird thing was how she acted during the baptism planning with our priest. Father Martinez asked about the name's significance for the certificate, and Emma became visibly nervous. Her hands were actually shaking as she stumbled through some vague explanation about family tradition, but I knew her family history pretty well, and there were no Connors anywhere in it. I decided to check her phone one evening while she was taking a shower. I felt absolutely terrible about violating her privacy, but something was clearly wrong, and I needed to understand what was happening. I found her text messages and searched for the word Connor. What I discovered made my stomach drop completely. There were dozens of messages to a contact listed simply as Connor J, going back over 2 years. Messages that were definitely not appropriate for a married woman. Messages about missing him desperately, about dreams they'd shared together, about a love that never died. The timestamp on the very last message was from the day before our son was born. It read, "He'll carry your name even if he can never know the truth about us." I sat on our bed staring at her phone, my hands shaking as I scrolled through months of evidence that my wife had been having an emotional affair, maybe much more than emotional. The dates lined up perfectly with when she would have gotten pregnant. Emma came out of the bathroom in her robe, saw me holding her phone with the messages open, and her face went completely white. The look of pure panic in her eyes told me everything I needed to know about who our son was really named after.